being here, for the people that came and for the people that have made this possible. And I hope that this talk is not that far away from the expectations. What I'm going to try to do today is to relate two problems. On the one hand, the problem of self-locating beliefs, and on the other hand, the problem of consciousness. That's what I will center to come back to that. I'm going to show not only that there is an obvious analogy in the arguments, but also that the kind of solutions, the two broadly understood kinds of solutions that have been proposed apply in the case of consciousness. However, I'm going to show or discuss that only one road has been explored, and the other one has not yet been explored, and that's what I bring you here to invite you to consider. And let me just place my plug because I don't know how good I'm doing it. Okay, thank you. So this is the structure of the talk. I'm going to start presenting these self-locating beliefs, where basically the idea is to make it compatible the possibility of having ignorance in the face of complete knowledge about the world. In order to solve or to approach this problem, there are two broadly conceived approaches. One is to inflate our ontology, introducing, for example, exegesis. The other one is to think of discriminations in regions that are more fine-grained than possible words. So in the case of knowledge, in the case of the knowledge argument, as an example, or at least as an approximation to the problem of consciousness, the problem is going to be similar. Articulate how there can be ignorance in the face of complete knowledge of the actual world. The solution is going to be to appeal to subjective information. And what I'm going to do is to try to characterize what is meant by this subjective information. I'm gonna present two ways in which information can be said to be subjective. I'm gonna call one the privileged and the perspectival way. I'm gonna show, following previous work, drawing on previous work, for example, by Robert, that the ongoing approximations to the problem are based on taking this route. Basically, on relying on some kind of notion of acquaintance in order to solve the problem. And what I'm going to say a little bit about the metaphysical cost of taking this avenue and propose the alternative. So that's more or less the schema of the talk. So let's begin with the problem of self-location, or the next problem of self-location. So self-locating beliefs are beliefs about one position or situation in the world, as opposed to belief about how the world is in itself. So you have read many times in the literature this idea that we have beliefs about oneself as such, trying to capture something interesting, or belief about oneself as a subject rather than as an object. Right? And here's one classical example. So you all believe that, hopefully, that Miguel is giving a talk. And I also share this third-person belief, but I am having also the belief that I am giving a talk. And there is a difference between this first-person or subjective belief and the third-person belief that you might entertain. And some people have argued in favor of the idea that these self-locating beliefs are special. There are two famous examples motivating this idea, one by Perry and one by Lewis. Probably you are all famous with the example of Perry. Perry is in the supermarket, pushing the trolley. He started to see the sugar and looking for who is making the mess. And Perry stopped looking for the messy shopper only when he comes to believe, I am making a mess. So neither the dicto belief that the unique philosopher in the supermarket is making a mess, or the re-belief that John Perry is making a mess, fully explains Perry's change in behavior, or so Perry argues. The other example is the one of the two gods that Lewis provides. He also invites us to imagine two gods, one in the highest mountain throwing down thunderbolts, the other one in the coldest mountain throwing down manna. And these two gods are supposed to know everything about the world, and that's all. So they don't have knowledge about exactly how the world is. So among the things that they know, if one is Pollux, we call one Pollux and the other Castor, is they both know that Pollux is in the highest mountain and that Castor is in the coldest mountain. However, they cannot locate themselves. They fail to know whether they are in the highest mountain or in the coldest mountain, and they don't know whether they are Pollux or Castor. This is the intuition that Perry wants us to serve. If we take those examples and accept them, we are trying to characterize what is special about believing of the form, I am fine, this kind of beliefs. And there are like two main approaches to this one. The first one is to think, look, this expression is an indexical expression, and the content of this belief changes from one context to another one. In this case, from one individual, as we go with the I, from one individual to another. Some people think that's all there is to the problem of self-belief, but some people think, no, they are special. They are still different from our knowledge of the actual world. And one way of approaching this question is by saying that this kind of content is not available to others. So one has some kind of restrictive access to that content. So here are a couple of ideas that might support this view. For example, Frege thought that everyone refers to oneself using the I in a way that no one else can. So whereas we all can think that Miguel is giving a talk, only I can have this belief under the I way of presentation. That would be the idea. So you cannot think that. Or think, for example, of the token reflexive theory, according to which the content of the belief B is a singular proposition that has this token belief as a constituent. Would be something like the subject of B is fine. Then this content is only available for this particular token belief, and another belief, even if it's of the same kind, would have a different content because the content is a singular proposition. Okay? So this is one approach. But there is a different approach that we all know from David Lewis, which is the non-indexical reading of the expression, according to which the content is the same across different individuals, and what changes is the truth value. So the idea is that the way in which this content carves possibilities are in regions that are not words, but positions within words, perspectives. And that's why I call this kind of content perspectival, corresponding to what others have called interesting as a content, or this kind of thing. But the main idea is that the way in which we carve possibilities is more fine-grained than possible words. I'm going to explain that with a toy example. So imagine that all our uncertainty about the world reduces to these two properties. We know that in the world there are two individuals, and we know that one is a man and another one is a woman. And those two individuals can be either red or green, represented here by the color of their glasses. Okay? So there are four alternatives. So this is the space of possibilities to understand our uncertainty. So we don't know whether the man and the woman are wearing red glasses, or, well, you get that. Okay? Now, under the first reading, the belief that I am red when held by the woman corresponds to the content, the woman is red, and it selects these two possible worlds, and it's true if this is one of the possible worlds and false otherwise. The content I am red when held by the man will correspond to this world and this world, and it's true if it's one of those. Sure thing. So now, if I happen to have the information, or the content that the woman is red and that the man is green, I have all the information about the world. I know exactly how the actual world is. Okay? But with this information alone, I'm not able to know who of the two individuals I am. Am I the woman? Am I the man? So that's the problem that Lewis presents. So do we need information or content that is more fine-grained than possible worlds? Not really. So here is the move that Steinlaker makes. So Steinlaker wants to say, look, no, because the two gods or the two individuals here cannot distinguish these two ways the world might be. There is some exeities, so the properties that makes the individual the kind of individual that it is, in this case, Leonard and Marta, and these content that I was mentioning do not distinguish a world in which all the properties that Marta has here are held by Leonard in this world. Okay, so we introduce exeities and we can distinguish this content from the content I am read when have by the woman who is Marta. Okay, that in this case correspond to this, and we can explain what is the difference between this possible world and the self-locating belief still in terms of possible worlds. But we have an alternative reading, and the alternative reading is in terms of individuals. So under this reading, and that's why here a P or a pair, what we have is a collection of individuals. So under this reading, the way in which this content is read is as a collection of individuals. In this case, those individuals who are read, I1, I2, I4, and I5. Okay, and it's true if the actual individual, so if I am one of those individuals and false otherwise. That's the idea of self-attribution of properties in Lewis. This piece of information or this content, together with the information that I am a woman and the information that my neighbor is green, here's how the partitions are done. Okay, and am I for? Right? So I can locate myself in the space of possibilities by those means. What I want you to pay attention is that the fact that I use the expression I am such and such has different readings, okay? Corresponding to different contents, corresponding to different partitions in the space of possibilities. Both if we take the indexical reading that is not privileged, or if I complicate somehow my ontology in order to make the partitions. So what I want you here to see is that the classes are different, and that's all that I need. So summarizing this first one. So this belief that I am fine have different readings that correspond to different content or different partitions in the space of possibilities. The important part is that we have two different approaches. According to one, what we do is we inflate the ontology, okay, and we can have still this difference in terms of possible words, okay? And what we do to make it different is to claim that the content can only be entertained if one occupies a particular location in logical space. In the case of the I, being a particular individual subject, okay? But there is a different reading, a different approach to the problem. That is the perspectival one. Or the non-indexical, according to which the content provides more fine-grained distinctions within the space of possibilities than what is captured by possible words. Before moving forward, let me say something. Sometimes, when we consider the problem of self-location, what is contrasted is the Perry's approach and the Lewisian approach. If you are familiar with that, is the idea that we have a belief state, and then it's a belief state toward a content. The reason why I'm not including that is because for some people, those belief states are just other content. And actually, for Perry afterwards, he gave up this view, and he talks in terms of the reflexive content and the referential content, okay? And in the case of in his case, and we will see that, the reflexive content is a token reflexive content. Whereas in the original paper, in the 79 paper, this can be read both as one approach like this one or as one approach like this one. That's why I don't get into the details, but that's not important. What is important here is that we see what are the two possible approaches, okay? So far, so good. I haven't said anything especially interesting about this particular problem, and just presented them out. So let's go now to the problem of consciousness, with which you are also familiar, and which I'm going to illustrate through the example of the knowledge argument. So you know Mary, and here is the situation that Mary has. In the original paper, Jackson thinks, look, Mary knows all the neurological facts about vision, about color vision, but she doesn't know what it is like to see red. Here, what I'm considering, because that's what I'm interested in, is that Mary knows all the fundamental facts and has ideal reasoning capacities. What I want to do is to grant her complete knowledge of the actual world. Why do I want to do that? Because I share the idea that no matter what we introduce in our fundamental ontology, insofar as it is not something phenomenal itself, we're going to end up with the same kind of intuition. So Robert, for example, thinks that what the knowledge argument motivates is an argument against objectives, and we're going to go to that. So what I want to do, the way in which I want to describe the situation, I want to grant her complete knowledge of the actual world, of physicalism, of all the physical properties. You think physicalism is the case, or also of souls, for example. So let's introduce souls, and she doesn't know what it is like to see red, or so I intuit. If you share this intuition, the problem is that she's inside the room, studying and saying, what the heck are feeling those people outside? She knows that you're feeling something. So it's because she feels red, she knows what it is like to see, she knows what it is like to see gray, but still wonders how does people feel when they are looking at these red things? Now she goes out, take the apple, and say, oh, now I know what you were feeling. That's it, yeah, that's a story, okay? What I want now first is to show what is the analogy, the obvious analogy between the two arguments. So here is, so both prefer, the structure of the arguments are similar. So there is some kind of knowledge that the individual has. So in the case of Perry, the dicto and the re knowledge in the messy software, or complete knowledge of the world in the case of the two gods, or complete scientific knowledge, physical knowledge, depending on which version you prefer. That is what Mary has. Now we have the intuition, and we rely on intuition, of course. Let's see how far we can go. That the individual has some ignorance. So Perry doesn't know who is doing the mess. The two gods don't know who one is, and Mary lacks phenomenal knowledge. And we conclude for that not all knowledge is of this kind. The structural similarity will not bring us that far. So what I want to do is to show that there is some connection between the two puzzles. And that's something that can be seen by the case of the two gods. So whenever I explain or try to communicate the example of the two gods, so people struggle with the idea of thinking of considering these two gods having complete knowledge of the actual world and yet no knowing who they are. Where is the problem? That the people tend to think that they are conscious, and this allows them to solve their uncertainty. The way in which I want you to think of the two gods is just like knowing the whole human mosaic of how the properties are distributed, and that's it. So the question is, which of those things here it's me? Okay? That's it. And indeed, Lewis foresees this question, not in terms of consciousness, okay? But he says, look, the trouble, in order to conceive the conceivability of the scenario that he's presenting, might perhaps be that they have all equally perfect view of every part of the world, and hence they cannot identify the perspective from which they view it. Okay, so he has this in mind. It's like, look, imagine that you are seeing everything at the same time, or something like that. It's easier just to say, well, they're not conscious, so they have just this description of the world. Why? Because the two gods know that Pollux is the unique resident on the tallest mountain, surrounded by stepped great rocks formation and sovereign mana. As soon as we let Pollux to be conscious, conscious of his actions, conscious of what he's seeing, he will be able to solve this uncertainty. Okay? But then the kind of information that he gathers from his experience cannot be the kind of information that he already had. So he has a new piece of evidence, and it's due to this new piece of evidence that he can solve this uncertainty. So that's a motivation for thinking that the information that the experience provides is itself self-locating, something that we would express, for example, along these lines. I am in such and such a state, or this state is such and such, okay? And the details of this reading it's what we're going to discuss about, okay? Let me say something about what I mean by information and why I talk in terms of information. So by information, I do not mean Shannon information, which is quantitative, namely how much uncertainty is constrained, how the entropy is reduced, rather the way in which this uncertainty is reduced. Of course, we can talk in terms of the content of the information by saying exactly what I mean by information. But I prefer not to use the word content because it is often used to talk about the object toward which the experience, the intentional object of the experience. And in my use, information encompasses not only the alleged referential element, but also the mode of presentation or the attitude involved or any further thing that contribute to constraint uncertainty. So that's why I'm using this notion of information. So, and indeed, conscious experience are a primary source of information. They convey certain information to the subjects in the form of awareness. So if you don't know what is right now on the TV, you might just turn and look at the TV, and the conscious experience that you will have will contribute to solve this uncertainty. And of course, such information can be either true or false, creating the corresponding partitions among possibilities that I was mentioning. Especially interesting for me is going to be the notion of phenomenal information. So that two experiences with the same phenomenology provide the same information. And the idea behind this is just this. If you were to have the same conscious experience that I'm having right now, you would share some information with me, and this is the information that one gathered in virtue of the phenomenology. Here, I'm saying the information that is associated with the phenomenology without entailing any metaphysical dependence relation, so being neutral on that. And in such a way that if two experiences have the same phenomenology, then one would have, if one has experience with the same phenomenology as mine, one would have some phenomenology shared with me. And though not explicitly, I will be also assuming the opposite direction, because what I want to provide is a representational, intentionalist approach to the idea, where all there is to phenomenology is information, though might not be so important for many of the things that I want to say. The motivation for that is just, I believe that our cognitive system works on the basis of manipulating and storing information-bearing structures. That is what we call representations. And then if I can think anything like that about consciousness, it better be something that is information. That's what, we can set that aside. So here is the view in information approach. Mary has complete factual knowledge, and she knows what the outer world is like. So she knows exactly how the world she inhabits is. However, she remains uncertain about what it is like for others to see red. And this uncertainty is resolved when she experiences red for the first time. And the idea would be that the experience provides a new piece of information. We want to characterize what is this piece of information. And the question is, but why is she not able to derive this information from her previous knowledge? One can say, look, isn't it obvious? Because we think that she has complete knowledge about the actual world, but she's missing something. There are some other facts that need to be added. So she didn't have complete knowledge. That would be the dualist approach. Or one can claim that she acquires no new information. It's only one ability. One problem with this kind of approaches, for example, is that this actually allows her to solve her previous uncertainty. So solving uncertainty, given her ideal reasoning capacities to derive whatever follows from the information she had, seems to be that there is new information. So there is some evidence that was missing there. And the third solution is to go, look, phenomenal information is somehow special and cannot be derived from her complete knowledge of the actual world. Why? Because phenomenal information is subjective, whereas the information that she has is objective. And now the question is, okay, fine, but what does it mean to have subjective information? Okay, and that's the next step. I'm going to distinguish two ways in which subjective information can be understood by opposition to the way in which we think of objective information. So, but first, here is the challenge. So here's the situation that I take to have arrived. It's the idea that it is possible, at least in principle, for science to discover the complete nature of the actual world. One can't deny that. Okay? But we're going to play on this assumption to see how far can we go. And we have this intuition, or at least share if you don't have this intuition, share what is behind the people that is willing to have this intuition and play along with me, please. So that it makes sense and you can continue here. So scientific knowledge, this scientific knowledge will be insufficient for phenomenal knowledge. So the challenge is, how can one remain ignorant despite having complete knowledge of the actual world? So here's a way of characterizing objective information. The objective information, some people refer to that as book information. Why? Because there is this book on sale in Amazon. Probably it's not available anymore. But it's a huge book. And there you have written what's the distribution of all the fundamental properties in the world. And if you are smart enough, from there you can come to know where are we going to have lunch and we're going to order. Even if we still seem to be undecided, read that and you will know. That's it. So the information in science, as the endeavor of science is to teach us how the world is, this information is exclusively about the way the world is. Hence, it is true or false, depending exclusively on how the actual world turns out to be. So this ends up to be the good book of science if the world indeed is the way the book says. There is also another feature that can be called open access, and that can be captured by the metaphor of the book. So you don't need to occupy any special location in order to read the book. So the information in the book can be accessed from any location in logical space, and it's not restricted to particular individuals, a spatial or temporal location, or those being in specific relations to a certain entity like the experience. So this is a way in which if this is a plausible way in which we characterize objective information, we're going to end up with two ways of characterizing subjective information, depending on which one we deny. And so we have two ways corresponding to what I was calling privileged information and perspectival information. According to the privileged notion of information, the information is just information about how the world is, okay? But it's not open access. One needs to occupy a particular location in order to gather the information, like as it happens in the case of Frey. Man, I'm sorry, but there is some information that you're missing. And the question is how to make it compatible with having complete possible world information, and we're gonna head there. But there is an alternative way to do so, which is just by it not being possible world information, rather it being more fine-grained information. In such a case, you are unable to derive that from the objective information because you are just carving the piece with a big chisel, and you cannot get to these nice forms that are more fine-grained. So that would be the idea. Okay, so now I'm going to move to the approaches based on privileged information and the relation of acquaintance, because it is typically this relation of acquaintance the one that is required in order to gather the information. So, the phenomenal information is subjective in what sense, according to the privileged view? Because it's information that can only be gathered from one particular location. Once one is in this direct access configuration with the information, and one it would be information from, oh, this is what it is like to see red. Okay? And this is information that one cannot gather if one is not in this acquaintance relation with the experience. So, for example, this is the case of Perry with this distinction between referential information and reflexive information. And he thinks that this information is privileged in that it's token reflexive. And we have seen how this token reflexive information is privileged. And then he gives an explanation of what is going on in the case of Mary, saying, like, in which, according to which, what he does is to have this information that she has, this is what it is like to see red, with her previous knowledge about the brain state that corresponds. Put these things together, and this is where the information comes from. And with significant subtleties, but along similar lines, Stallnaker claimed that there is essentially contextual information, namely information conveyed within a specific context that cannot be separated from this context. So what explains that Mary cannot have this information is that she has not occupied the required location in logical space. And we can illustrate that by the example that Perry gives. So he imagines himself being at a party and having drinks with a guy, and suddenly the guy tells, hey man, I wrote knowledge on the flow of information. And then he comes to believe, oh, this man, the man that I'm acquainted with, wrote knowledge on the flow of information. This is knowledge that she didn't have before, but not only that, she also put that in connection with other information that he had about Tredsky, and that's an epistemic advance. So that would be the idea. There is some thought that one can only form when it's in the relation of acquaintance. So something like this is what it is like to see red, and this information, in order to have this information, one needs to be there in the acquaintance relation. The problem that I see with the acquaintance relation is that Mary's epistemic gain is substantive. What do I mean by a substantive epistemic gain? Well, an epistemic gain is substantive for a subject just in case it contributes to solve a previous uncertainty. And the problem there is that privileged information does not seem to be substantive to solve an uncertainty for someone with complete factual information. Okay? Why? Well, just imagine that we change Perry by Mary. So Mary, having complete factual information, knew that she was going to meet Tredsky. She knew exactly what is the number of hairs that Tredsky has in his face, what is the form of the winkles that form with every single expression. So there is no real uncertainty, for my pronunciation. No real uncertainty that her first meeting with Tredsky would solve. Of course, so privileged information can explain the doxastic difference between actually having the experience and not having it, okay? But this is not the doxastic difference that we want to explain, because it is not substantive, okay? Robert has argued in different terms about a similar problem with all present solution, how they were committed to this acquaintance solution, and say, wait, this is not the dead end. Here's a possible solution. And he introduces aspects. What are aspects? So aspects are part of the nature of properties that are not expressible by physical description, features of properties that the mind can discern. And he provides an analogy in order to capture this idea. So imagine any object that is extended in space. It will have a front part and a back part, okay? And of course, our mind can think of the front part and the back part, but you cannot have a front part without having the back part. Something similar to these front and back are properties and their aspects. So aspects are entities intentionally individuated by linked to properties with metaphysical necessity and only knowable by being acquainted with the corresponding properties. So I think that something very close to this idea for example, I think that Andrik was suggesting yesterday, something, I mean, with some differences. It's like there is something that you really need to be in the acquaintance relation in order to grasp it. So now, an area epistemic game can now be substantive. She knows the distribution of all the properties, but she doesn't know the aspects. Okay? So she wonders about the qualitative aspects of people's experience, and when she has the experience and is acquainted with the corresponding property, say that of being in such and such brain state, she comes to know the qualitative aspects and resolves her previous uncertainty. So, well done. Here's one. Here's the characterization in terms of partitions of possibilities about this information. Here is the view of the uncertainty that the dualist thing that is going on. So there are different ways the world might be, and associated to the kind of let's take brain states to be the structure, the physical structure that corresponds to the experience of red. And she wonders about what is the quality that goes side by side. Okay? And then Mary has the experience, this one. Right? That would be the idea. So I think that what the step that Robert is taking, no, those are metaphysically impossible words. Okay? Why? Because the aspects are linked with metaphysical necessity to the properties, and this way we save at least the letter of the physicalism. So what I want you to appreciate is the point where we have reached. So if we go with the privileged avenue, where we end up is what some sort of solution that what it does is to increase somehow our ontology. So I want you to look at the similarities between this solution and this solution. There are differences. By that I mean the introduction of anxieties. So both approaches introduce something extra in the ontology. So the idea is to expand somehow the space of possibilities by having intrinsic anxieties in the case of possible worlds, or these qualitative aspects that they're not really. So we're not really increasing the number of metaphysically possible worlds, but we need those impossible worlds. Okay? Here, I'm not going to offer a complete objection. I just want to motivate the possibility of looking into a completely different direction. Okay? So here, the obvious idea is like those aspects are very, very close with what dualist postulates as properties. So aspects are the properties of those who think that phenomenal properties are fundamental, but link as a matter of metaphysical necessity with physical properties. One other worry is like, okay, so I can come to know the qualitative aspects of my brain states, but how about the qualitative aspects of the property of being a table? And I'm really worried because I tend to do things like that. And if that aspect has something to do closely related to pain, it's not the kind of things that I really want to do. But there is no way in which that remains completely unknowable to me. And there might be some connections. So if we want to say maybe some properties, maybe not all, have these qualitative aspects. So it brings us to something in the vicinity of panpsychism. Robert has written about that, and I'm not going to say much more about that. But also, I also have this intuition, and many people say that acquaintance is not necessary for phenomenal knowledge. So I think that a physical duplicate of mine, this being won't worry about what it is like to see red. Okay? But this being has never, imagine that I'm not seeing red right now, just here we have this swamp man, okay? This thing, if it has some phenomenology, would not wonder about what it is like to see red. So if this is correct, the relation of acquaintance is not required in order to gain phenomenal knowledge. I'm not saying that any of those are anything like killing argument. I'm just motivating going in the opposite directions, because there are good reasons for thinking that this is what we always exploit. So what I propose is like, well, let's have a look to another direction. And this is the one that has to do with this perspectival information. So just to remind you, we have one way of understanding subjective information, covering this intuitive idea that information is subjective in the sense that it's available only to me, it's not available to you. This is what the privileged information captures adequately. But what I'm proposing is also that there is also an alternative way of reading this subjective information in terms of partitions that are more fine-grained than possible worlds. So, this perspectival information carves possibilities whose regions are not worlds, but positions, perspective within the world. In the case of information expressed using this, the first-person pronoun, something like individuals. So, in having the experience, Mary learns that the information red experiences convey is I am seeing red there. This indicates with the reading, okay, so with the partitions that I want to mention. So here's the situation. So here's what Mary knows. So Mary perfectly knows the physical state people are when they see red. So she has no doubt about that. So she knows what it takes to have the information. Of course, knowing what it takes to have the information is not the same thing as having indeed the information, right? So I might come to know what is required for a system in order to have complete knowledge of the actual world. I just do my neuroscience and study Mary's brain and say, look, if I were to be in that state, I would definitely know what it is like to see, how the world is like. But knowing that is not enough for her to grasp the information conveyed. But this is not enough, so this is not, the challenge still remains, okay? Some people like Jackson at some point thought, all that we need to do is to go with representations. No, stop, why? Because we still need to explain why she is unable to derive the information that's conveyed from her complete factual knowledge. And the answer is that you cannot understand the complete knowledge of the actual world does not allow her to derive the way in which red experiences carve possibilities. So, if phenomenal information is perspectival and hence more fine-grained than scientific explanation, we can explain why she cannot derive this information. That's the approach, roughly, that I'm proposing by comparing these two things. But before closing, I want to add just a couple of details. There might be other questions that I treat in the paper, but just these two details, because one might wonder, look, man, you're just appealing to Lewisian center worlds, and Lewis brought into the picture these center worlds. Why he didn't went this way? And here's the main argument that Lewis presents to think that why Mary's epistemic gain cannot be characterized by I am seeing red pair. So Lewis acknowledges that Mary gains perspectival knowledge in having the experience, okay? And this is knowledge that she could not have obtained inside the room. However, Lewis complains, Mary retains knowledge of what it is like to see red even after the experience ends. And she is no longer in the state of seeing. As she is no longer in this set, the information is false, and what is false cannot be known. This is Lewis, okay? But that's fine, okay, so far so good. But what Mary learns is the information that those state carries. So once he has the experience, he can come to know how the experience carries possibilities. And it is still true that the experiences carve possibilities this way, okay? So she can retain this knowledge. One further this analogy between Mary and the two gods, or Pollux. So I want to make it clear that Mary's uncertainty and the gods' uncertainty are different. So Mary has all the knowledge that the two gods have, plus phenomenal information. So she knows that she is Mary. She can perfectly locate herself in the logical space. She has no doubt whatsoever about who she is, the world, and who, where, and when she is in the world. So one might question, if she has complete self-location, how is it possible that she learns something? And the question is easy, because her being able to self-locate is consistent with her not knowing the information some state carry. Okay? So here's one example. So If I give you the piece of information that Uriah is the only person in the room with a yellow shirt, anybody will be able. Yeah. I was close. Everybody would be able to locate this information. Would not be sufficient in another context, so in another world. So whereas the information, the self-locating information that Mary has, together with the contingencies of the world, allows her to perfectly locate in the logical space, there are many alternatives in which that would be insufficient for her to self-locate, and thereby makes room for not knowing how every single experience might carve the space of possibilities. So I'm just closing by saying that the knowledge argument and the arguments for self-locating belief have the same form, and I have tried to show that there are two solutions resulting in two kinds of content, and I have used that to articulate subjective information. So one is what I have called privileged information, which is have an indexical reading, okay? It's possible word information, and it's based on the restriction in access to the information. Right? The alternative, the other way, I'm not favoring a particular way of understanding subjectivity. I'm just trying to characterize what people might mean by subjective and how appeal to subjective information contribute to face the puzzle that I was presenting. And there is also the perspectival, the non-indexical, and non-possible word reading, according to which partitions are more fine-grained. So I have said that accounts in the literature have explored one way or other this privileged route by means of acquaintance, and I have sketched the idea that they either cannot account for very substantial epistemic gain, or that they have a significant metaphysical cost. So thinking of it in terms of perspectival information offers a novel approach for addressing the problem of consciousness. So in general, a different way of thinking of what's going on. And elsewhere in a different paper, I have argued that indeed phenomenal information is perspectival, so that it is more fine-grained than possible world information. So one thing that I find especially interesting, like the more ambitious work that I am doing, is like, well, if consciousness provides this kind of perspectival, self-locating information, we can think what is the role that consciousness, we can consider what is the role that consciousness plays in our cognitive architecture, and how do we solve problems because we have this kind of information. I'm not saying that the only way to solve problems is appealing to this kind of information, but we can think of ways of solving the problem without having this kind of information, because we don't have the phenomenology, for example, in an artificial system, and the way in which we might solve by exploiting this information. And this will help us, for example, to think of what is the role that conscious state play in cognition, and that is more or less the general framework that I wanted to discuss with you and present you, and thank you very much.
First, Andrik, please.
Let me put myself later because I need it.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, so thank you very much. Trying to follow your talk, I find it extremely interesting. And I have a question that's maybe a little bit stupid, so it's more like could you clarify and explain to me this? Like so this perspectival information is not a matter of metaphysical possibilities, right?
No, it's not. No.
So this is the potentially stupid question, although there are no stupid questions in the proper sense. But it's this. Suppose in any of these scenarios, whether you understand the Mary situation or the God situation in this way, when somebody comes to know which is their location, right, which would be the perspectival information if I'm following you well, in the world. Now compare two worlds, two alleged possible worlds. One where Mary does not get to know that, or one of the gods does not get to know that and the other one where it does. Why is not a metaphysical possibility getting to know this, and how does that not affect
I'm not talking about metaphysical possibilities.
Yeah.
The metaphysical possibilities are given by the metaphysically possible worlds, and I'm considering that those are given by whatever your favorite account is. Distribution of properties out of the actual world, whatever you take that. So the claim that I'm making is that the partitions among the possibilities are not among possible worlds, but fine-grained. So they make discriminations within a world. So possible worlds, possible world information, so carve possibilities into sets of possible worlds. And this perspectival information carve possibilities into locations within the world. So you can write down, and that's why this thing was important, and I spent some time, this thing here. Here. You see? Okay, so here. So you cannot do these kind of lines with possible world information, and that's what it's doing. So that's part of what is doing the trick, and you cannot do with this kind of information, you cannot come to this kind of partition. So with another piece, if you have this piece, you can separate this thing into this, okay? And that's where you come to location within the space.
Okay.
Anna, did you raise your hand? Oh, sorry, Santiago, please.
Thanks. I have a question about whether your view and any subjective information view over-generates phenomenon of consciousness. And my question is based on the following scenario. Let's replace Mary with a very complex robot. The robot can learn all the objective facts about the world.
Yeah.
The robot has also very sophisticated color detectors. However, the robot has been in the black and white room, so some of these detectors have never been activated. The robot also can report immediately, spontaneously, without reflection, what the detectors can. What the detectors respond to. So when detecting some kinds of gray, it says, oh, that's gray. Some black, that's black. That's white, and so on. So there is a sense in which the robot can be in a state of uncertainty. So what would I report immediately if I was exposed to what these people are exposed to after leaving the room? Now, let's suppose that the robot is let out, is exposed to a red apple, and performs a discrimination that was never performed before, and that results in an utterance of the form, oh, that's red.
Why?
So why what?
So I'm finished the idea.
So it's detectors, it has discriminatory abilities, and it can report what it discriminates, and so it's in a state that reports, oh, red. So in your framework, we would say that a state of uncertainty was solved after leaving the room.
Yeah.
And in Perry's framework, you could say there is a new kind of access to an objective, like the classical possible world content, but it's causal. I mean, it now stands in a causal relation to something that he never had the opportunity to be causally related to, because it had never the opportunity to be exposed to these wavelengths.
Yeah.
So then I think some people, I think in the room might have the intuition that there is all you have in your view, but there is not phenomenal consciousness. And maybe you would say that thought experiment is not coherent. There is something that is wrong there. So I would like to see what you would say.
I fail to understand what is the uncertainty, what is the robot uncertain about? So can you spell out what would be the discriminate, the partitioning possible in the space of possibilities? What is the thing that the robot does not, what is the uncertainty? So the uncertainty of Mary is seeing, doesn't know what it is like to see red. The way in which you are describing, the road goes out and enters into a state she couldn't be in advance. For me, it sounds very much like the acquaintance response. in which, now I'm in a state I couldn't be before, fine, but it's not clear to me that the scenario that you are describing, the robot now can make any discrimination that it was not able to do before. Of course, it enters a state it couldn't enter before, that I grant you that. So if I have never been, I'm Mary, and I have never been in front of Mary, I must say, oh, this is Tretzky, right? And I couldn't form that before, because I have not been visually attending or whatever that you think that is required to Tretzky. But this thing does not solve any uncertainty for someone with complete. So it's not clear to me in the scenario that you are describing what is the uncertainty that the robot in having this thing flag, because it already knew that this thing was going to flag, it knew what was the state it's going to be, etc., etc. So it's not clear to me what is the uncertainty that it solves, that this state solves.
So here's can I have a...
Really? Yes.
So think about the robot as knowing that it has a range of discriminatory abilities that it has never exercised because it's in a white and black room.
Yeah, so it knows that. Yeah, complete knowledge.
And so I have all these, but I wonder how I will react when
But he knows. If you have complete knowledge of the actual world, the robot knows how it's going to act. He can predict any future state the robot is going to be. There is no uncertainty whatsoever. So complete knowledge of the actual world means no knowledge about the distribution of future.
So the robot says, I will react to this in this way. I will react to this.
I don't know, because
I will react to this.
It depends on what the robot means by I. My intuition is what the robot means is robot will act this way. So the reading of this I will react this is a mere indexical anything. So what it means, what the robot means when it says I will react this way, what the robot means is robot will react this way, and this is not perspectival information.
Yeah, I don't think you have a number, but anyways. Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, there might be something missing there.
Andrew, are you ready?
Yeah. Could we go back to the slide with the qualitative stuff? I guess I was thinking a lot of that sounded good to me. And I'm just trying to
This one here? This one? Or
I think it's the next one, either the previous or next.
This one?
Yeah.
The one with aspects?
I guess there's a few slides on that. I was just trying to understand better your objections.
No, I have no my objection to this.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is perfectly, informatively, this is perfectly fine. So this thing can explain why Mary has epistemic gain. Indeed, what you were presenting, I don't have any objection in terms of information against the view, insofar as I was following with the view that you were presenting. That illustrates some way, depending on whether you want it to be, because depending on how you unpack the idea of a first-person presentation of properties. So one way of unpacking this is like the aspects. I mean, that might be one possibility in which you are not committed to something at the level of properties over and above the neural states. So that's informationally totally fine. The worries were like, I don't see any problem with being a dualist. That's totally fine. I mean, I haven't given any argument against dualism, other than saying is that.
I'm not a dualist, Justin.
Huh?
I'm not a dualist.
No, but for example, so it's like, or somebody might have a panpsychist connection. I mean, I haven't given an argument that there is a commitment with panpsychism. I'm just suggesting things and say, hey, can you pay attention to me? Because I was more interested into presenting the other thing. So it has to do with problems with acquaintance and problems with the ontological commitments. The introduction of these entities, aspects, or first-person presentations of neural states. If that the motivation is to respond to the argument, here is another way. And maybe it's required. Maybe we require that because somebody comes with an argument, look, but Miguel, you're missing this element. You might be right on that, but we also need, that's fine. So maybe we end up with something like that also. That is
I see. So maybe I just didn't track part of the dialectic because I thought that you were putting this view on the table and then presenting some objections to the view. And I thought one of the objections had to do with the idea that this view requires postulating impossible worlds.
That's yes. So here is the view. This is the dualist view. Okay. So in order to characterize the way in which the phenomenal information constraint and uncertainty for the dualist, you postulate these possible worlds, in which you have this brain state and associated with this quality. Okay, that's a dualist view. And here is the subjective physicalism, and Robert can correct me if I'm wrong. So no, you have these alternatives. Those alternatives are not metaphysically possible. And in this sense, this is impossible. The epistemic game is explained in terms of impossible worlds. Then you don't have any problem with physicalism, because physicalism, what the trouble for the letter of physicalism is that this world cannot be a metaphysically possible one. And that's what is doing the trick in the case. In the case of aspects, I think, if my understanding is correct.
So was this part meant to be an objection? Or
No. There was no objection there. All that I was saying in this slide was saying, look at how this, in what respect this is similar to what's going on here. So what we do is we inflate our ontology, but there is no objection whatsoever. I'm saying what the view says. So just saying that this privilege, that the information is privileged, is not sufficient, and you need to introduce something. You introduce something and then everything is fine and you have a solution. And then I'm saying, but look, metaphysically, you may be willing to look elsewhere. I can press much farther. I can try to press much farther, but that's not the aim here. So the aim was to say, there are some issues here that you don't have it in the other hand.
And just one other clarification. You said something about swap and acquaintance on the slides, and I didn't understand.
So here's my, sure. So it's this idea. So if I'm not seeing, can you please take away this red computer? No. So right now, I'm just, I'm just joking. So I'm not seeing anything red, okay? Now you take a duplicate of mine, okay? A physical duplicate of mine, and I have this intuition. It's only an intuition. I'm not going to even argue for that. So Bennett or Pete Mandic and other people have argued for that. I just offer that to you, and you let me know what you think. This thing has never been acquainted with red, okay? However, this thing has no uncertainty about what it is like to see red. If you agree with that, then there seems to be a tension with the idea that phenomenal knowledge requires acquaintance.
I don't want to take up too much time, but I think that thought that you just expressed could be resisted. But we can talk.
I would love that.
Maybe I'll put myself in.
Maybe at the end, and later. Okay, Robert?
So, I have a question about the Lewis objection to the textual view and your response to it. So Lewis's, one way of putting Lewis's objection is the idea that the knowledge that you gain is portable, and textual knowledge isn't. Once she leaves the context, she can now know what it's like to see red, despite the fact that she's not in that particular situation. Interestingly, that's not that dissimilar from the objection that you just raised against the acquaintance theories, I think. But your response was that she knows. Let's see. What is it? The last thing. Didn't she already know that?
So there are two reads of that. I'm going to call this thing information. So here's the book. Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the book. I'm going to call complete information about the world info.
Yeah.
So you know that the book has info. Okay, for now, right? But you know what is the content of that, right? And here's the same. So what she knows is that there is something called, I'm going to introduce a label for that information. It has a specific information, but she doesn't know how this carves possibilities. She cannot derive the content of this information, the way in which this piece carves. So the content, what she cannot know is the content. She knows that it has the information, so she knows that, call that red or I don't know, put a label. So she knows that those states carry information. That's something that she knows.
Right.
But what she doesn't know is what is the content of this information. I'm using content and information, but I hope that this is helpful to you. It's like the case of the book that I'm presenting. So you know that the book, the information of the book is complete possible what information, you know that, right?
Yeah.
But you still don't know the content.
Yeah.
So that's the analogy that I want to bring here. Let's see this.
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm worried about. I guess I'm worried about a little bit of a dilemma here, and maybe we just answered it, and I didn't see it. But the dilemma would be something like, look, I mean, so there's something that she gets by virtue of being in the particular perspective, right? And that's what you're using to actually give what Mary really learns, right? And I want that to be portable, right? But it looks like if I tie that too much to being in an indexable position, it's not portable. So I'm just wondering,
It is portable. So
Yeah.
it's actually perspectival information is portable. So you don't need to be in this situation. So that's precisely what you call portable is what I call open access. So because it comes exactly for the, let's say, discussion. So here, let me come here. So the way in which I characterize perspectival information, this open access is portable. So you don't need to occupy a particular location in order to gather the information. So it's information, it's like this thing here. So you don't need to be, so you here. So here. So think of the information, I am red. I mean, I am a woman. This is information that this guy can have. It's no problem, just that in this case would be false.
Yeah.
Okay? So in this sense, the information is portable. You don't need to be none of these individuals in order to have the information. Of course, you need to be one of those for the information to be correct, as it happens in the case of the possible worlds. So I want the way in which I characterize this perspectival information and the way of understanding the centering that I was mentioning before is in such a way that it's portable.
so what I guess I don't understand is if it is portable, why can't I have that without actually entering into the indexable state?
I agree with you. So no. She can. So all that I'm arguing is that it's not derivable from the information that she has. I'm not claiming, and I'm not committed to the claim that in order to gather the information, she has to be in the state. No. Okay? One way of gaining the information is being in the state. One thing. And one way not to get the information is just by reading the book. That's all that I'm saying. So I'm not saying that this is information that can only be gathered if she has the experience. No. There might be other ways. Like, for example, being in my brain configuration without having the experience.
Well, no, I guess what I mean is, I'll just leave it after this. I guess what I mean is, why don't we know it as soon as we read your description here? Like, I basically now that there is such a state that that I can enter into in these certain circumstances. It's going to have certain content. It divides possible worlds in this particular way. Looks like I know all that before I ever enter into new states. What is it that I'm learning?
Because you don't know, that's not enough for us to know how the partitions in possibilities are known. We don't know the whole. So the knowledge that we are attributing to Mary is how the actual world is, not how the complete space of possibilities is and the different ways in which it can be carved. This is not the kind of knowledge that we are attributing to Mary. So if we have that, then it's yes. So that's basically the idea, and we can please continue. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. Okay, here's the thing I find puzzling about all this. So it seems to me that the version of the Mary case that would be most analogous to the self-locating ignorance case would be a case where Mary actually already has experiences of red and experiences of green and stuff like that. And she's able to think about them in this kind of subjective way, like this experience, and so on. And then she's given this objective description of all these other people. And then she wonders what it's like for them when they're in certain brain states. So she's like, she already has the experience of red, and she's like, okay, well, this person's in this brain state, but is what it's like for them like this, or like this, or like this? That's the real analogy with the self-location case.
I don't know.
But the actual Mary case isn't that case. The actual Mary case is like, she doesn't even have concepts of these experiences yet. but yet somehow she still seems to be able to coherently wonder, like,
So how
what
is
is it like for other people to see red? Which seems different. I mean, and actually, if you're pushing the indexical analogy, it sort of feels a bit like that thought doesn't even make sense. It would be a bit like me noticing that Uriah can think the thought, I am Uriah. But I can't have that thought because I'm not Uriah. But then I'm sort of wondering, like, what is this thing that Uriah grasps that I can't grasp? And then maybe I become Uriah. And then, like, finally I can grasp the thought, I am Uriah, in the way that I couldn't before. That's more like the Mary case, except that thing with I am Uriah doesn't make any sense. There wasn't something that I didn't know. So yeah, that's the thing that bugs me. It's
So
like,
a few things. So I disagree with the concepts because I'm characterizing so Mary wonders about what it is like for others to see red, right? So, and this thing that she wonders inside the room is the uncertainty that is resolved when she sees red. So this thing that she cannot even think about what she cannot think. So she's inside the room and she's thinking, what the hell, how does this thing feel? And then she goes out, this way. So it seems that I fail to see that there is any incapacity on her side for thinking about what is going on in the other brains, because she wonders exactly about the thing that she, before having the experience. And that's, for example, said by a soldier. This is the first thing with regard to the not knowing. So I don't know how you feel, but I think that Mary can perfectly understand that people have experiences and she wonders about what it is like to see red.
but so here's the thing. It's like there's two kinds of ignorance that she has in the original case.
Yeah, I'm going to this. I'm going to.
Yeah, there's like.
I know. So those are like the two steps in the Mariana, in the Nida Rumelin case. So there are like two steps. So Mariana, in the example of Nida Rumelin's, it's like Mary, she enters into the arbitrary painted room and she sees all these colors, but she doesn't know which one is red. Okay? And you say, oh, your case is like the second step, like the one that links the experiences that she's having and then knowing which one is red. But this is not the kind of ignorance that Mary has. So I'm with you, and if you are right, I'm in trouble, because I think that the way in which I am describing the situation of Mary is such that once she entered into the arbitrary colored room, she knows there is no uncertainty left. So because before entering into the room, she knew that every ordinary subject, whenever it's in front of this thing that is painting on the right corner, is going to have this brain state, so this is red, etc., etc. The only thing that she doesn't know is what it is like to see red. She would have no problem knowing which patches in those elements correspond to redness. She knows that the surface reflectance of the banana there correspond to green rather than yellow, etc., etc. And then the point that I am making is that the kind of knowledge that Mary gains is one that she cannot derive from the information of the book, that she doesn't know what is the information those states carry. So there might be also worry, let me ask you, so on whether all there is to phenomenal gain or to phenomenal knowledge can be information. Is that would be something like that?
It's more like it feels like there's two kinds of ignorance. There's like ignorance about how the subjective facts map onto the objective facts. And she can formulate questions about that after she already knows what it's like to see red. She's like, okay, well, there's this particular phenomenal character that I'm now acquainted with. How does that map onto things like brain states? That seems to be the question that's analogous to the self-locating.
Oh, wow.
Results. But then there's also this thing of like, there's these experiences, I wonder what they're like. And that seems like a different kind of ignorance that isn't captured, all these stuff.
But when you say it seems, what I'm missing, can you help me, or maybe we can continue later, because it seems, but it seems to me. So there is like, I acknowledge the two steps in ignorance. So one that corresponds to what it is like, the real thing with what it is like to see red. And the other one is what are the kind of experiences that correspond to its neural state. So what paths correspond to brain states. The second one is one that she never ever had inside the room. So she has no doubt whatsoever about what is the relation between properties in the world and brain states, how they relate, how they interact. There is no doubt whatsoever. She doesn't even wonder about that inside the room. So that cannot be what she's wondering about. She's wondering about something she doesn't know. So it cannot be this thing. So the second step in Ida Rummelin's example.
Let's talk about it.
Okay.
Yes, so you're sitting here.
Could I have fingers? But I agree with what Jeff is saying. It seems like you are saying that Mary is in the case of like seeing the wall painted, because what you're doing with the carving fine range with the possible words is presupposing that you have the phenomenal facts there. And the only problem is the fine grain carving.
Yes, sure.
And but that is what Mary doesn't have.
No.
When
Facts.
Mary is in the black and white room, she doesn't have. I mean, if she could hallucinate redness in the room, then it would be similar. Well, I don't know if that's hallucination.
But she will learn what it is like to see red.
The point is you're presupposing the carving is presupposing that you have a phenomenal.
Absolutely. So those are the rules of the game. The rules of the game that I'm playing is how explaining how. If Mary knows, so is this scene here. So of course I'm presupposing that because I take that to be the challenge that I'm trying to meet, which is this one. Mary has complete factual knowledge, so there is no further fact. Okay? One can deny that, and one way of denying that is but the phenomenal facts are missing. So there are some further facts. By facts I mean metaphysical facts, not propositions. Okay? So she knows exactly what is the distribution. So take an ontology, a simple ontology where you have distribution of properties over objects or something like that. The simplest ontology that you can think. She knows how they are distributed, the basic properties there, and then she can come to know that somebody is going to knock in the door. All those other facts, but not. So every other thing can be derived. So we're attributing to her complete knowledge of the actual world.
Physical knowledge, right?
Complete.
She wasn't a dualist.
So, but that's not the dialectic. So the dialectic, I wasn't clear enough. So here's no. If you're a dualist, it's fine. So even if you are a dualist, so here's what. So if you are a dualist, you would deny this, that it is important. Here, it is possible in principle for science to discover the complete nature of the actual world. You might deny that, fine. And you're a dualist and say, look, there are these phenomenal facts, so I reject these things. Okay, then fine. Then play along with me. Okay? Concede premise one. So what I'm trying to do is accept this, and how can I make sense of this, if this is true? But I disagree, that's fine. I'm saying, if this is true, how this thing can be also true? How do we explain this if we accept this? That's the dialectic.
So, but this is not the original case.
No. This is not. So the original case is supposed to be showing that physical knowledge is insufficient to have phenomenal knowledge. Then some people like Robert have argued that what is really at stake is that objective knowledge cannot account for phenomenal knowledge. And this is what I'm trying to describe here. No matter what you introduce at the fundamental level, is this intuition. I mean, who cares about physics? How much do we know about what is the fundamental physics? I introduce whatever you want here at the fundamental level that is not phenomenology itself, you're not going to be able to have that. That's why I'm characterizing it this way. So in this sense, is how to make sense of, and one possible solution is, of course, you need to introduce these phenomenal facts at the fundamental level. What I'm trying to do is, do we? And trying to say, how do we avoid this? That would be the dialectic.
Can I say just one last thing?
Sure,
it seems like there's a distinction between a non-ambitious claim where you're saying phenomenal facts or phenomenal knowledge or phenomenality is perspectival, in the sense of like a feature of it is that it's perspectival and we need to capture that. And the more ambitious one that is identifying phenomenal knowledge with, and I think you can show the second one, I mean, this argument goes to, but not the ambitious one.
Cool. So the fact I was motivating, so for example, the motivation that phenomenal knowledge is perspectival is, you take it by the example of two gods, is intuitive, or I have another argument showing how phenomenal information is always perspective. Fine. And what I'm trying to do in order to argue that phenomenal knowledge is perspectival is saying the following. If phenomenal knowledge is perspectival, you have a reply to the knowledge argument. That's what I try. This is the dialectic. So if the challenge is to explain this thing here, I have shown two ways of trying to answer this question. One by appeal to privileged information, and one by appeal to privileged information. If the phenomenal information is perspectival, you can make compatible the possibility that somebody has complete knowledge of the outer world and yet ignorance about the information that conscious states carry. So maybe I wasn't clear enough about the dialectic. So my fault. So I'm trying to. Thank you.
Right.
I have two questions. The first is, can I have the PowerPoint, because the slides on the problem of self-location and the different solutions were very beautiful. I'd like to spend an afternoon with them, because I think you resemble Mary, that you don't know what it's like for others to think slowly. So I need more time with the slides. But they were very beautiful. Intellectually beautiful. It's okay. My other question is, I think it's a clarificatory question. If there's a zombie Mary who's cognitively and behaviorally indistinguishable from Mary, and she knows, all the stuff that Mary knows that you can know consistently with being a zombie. Then she comes out and she sees the apple. It seems like the perspectival content is not accessible to zombie Mary, and I don't understand how that sits with the open access thing.
Cool. Just a quick thought about what's going on. Part of what I was saying at the end is that maybe if phenomenal states provide this perspectival information, zombies, it's not clear to me that ultima facie, at the end of the day, inconceivable. I mean, functionally, because the source of self-locating information would be phenomenology, and maybe the zombie can gather this information, self-locating information. I'm not saying, there is no argument whatsoever saying that the only way to have perspectival self-locating information is through phenomenology, but phenomenology is what gives to us so functionally identical at a sufficiently refined level. But more to be said, and I haven't thought about complete a prioricity and et cetera, et cetera.
Am I understanding correctly that you're thinking of this zombie Mary situation, the point that it shows, one person's modus ponens is another's modus tollens, so it could be a problem for the perspectivalist approach to self-location, or it could be a reason to think that zombie Mary is actually superficially equal.
And I wasn't completely uncertain or having thought enough. And then, so there is like this, so here's a capacity, and maybe an artificial, a different system can solve the same kind of problems that we can solve without appealing to this perspectival information. That might be. So then it's interesting, what is the architecture, or what is the way of problem solving for which this kind of information might contribute to as a route to thinking.
Yeah, thank you. So I noticed this Egan's appearance properties are proposed for another problem, which is spectral inversion. But since it appears that we're doing a lot of significant analogies in this workshop, I was I wanted to ask you if you could see some similarities. There's a sense of appearance properties in, for example, when you say that we are inflating our ontology, well, there's these other properties. I know you're not trying to do the same as Egan, but I was wondering if you could see the relation and maybe help me understand how come your perspective, what you're saying about perspective, doesn't have to do with just information about possible words in order to understand you a little bit more?
Sure. So Andy Egan postulate what I'm calling center features, perspectival content to solve the problem of a spectrum for representationalism. He says that the content cannot be the properties, the redness, but something like redness for me, and the way in which is for me has to be read is in a non-indexical manner, as doing these kind of things. Mm-hmm. So you can say that this introduces center features, and he talk in terms of center features, so you need the content to be center features, or self-attribution of properties, or these Lewisian contents. And the reason why and it's true, so you introduce these center features, but these center features are just those kind of partitions. So you don't need anything extra. So you only have, a center feature is just this line. It's nothing over and above. So redness for me, the way in which it's read is just one of those partitions. So you only need the distribution of properties. In this case, two properties, being a man or a woman in red and green, in order to have the kind of contents that Andy Egan appeals to, namely those center features, namely those perspectival contents. That's
and you're adding? What are you adding with your?
I'm not adding, so when you look at the comparison between, if this is a fair comparison, when you're comparing, so take this view. So in this view, we are introducing, in order to characterize something, we are introducing examples. Okay, so where we switch the properties, all the qualitative properties, but still different individuals. Or think in the case of aspects, or in the case of the dualism, we add some more elements into the ontology. Here is just different ways of making the partitions. That's the idea. It's an informational problem and not an ontological problem. That's what I wanted to point. I wanted to provide, at the very beginning, the knowledge argument is presented as an informational problem. And I think that it's an informational problem. So that's...
We still have 6-7 minutes. Okay.
I had a follow-up, so it's a little bit related to Ryan's question and my previous question. I think there is a structural problem with your strategy, and I want to try to make it clear in a regional way. So I think we agree that phenomenal information, if we buy your account, is a subset of subjective information.
No, well, no, I wasn't saying that. Yeah, okay. I just
so, for instance, if the information that I'm wearing red glasses, it would count as, or that would count as perspectival information.
It depends. So the information, the message that I am wearing red glasses has 3 different readings. 2 of them are indexical, saying that that's just all that you are saying is that Santiago is wearing glasses. 1 indexical but privileged, according to Santiago with its Santiago hood is wearing glasses in a way that's only Santiago, and there is 1 perspectival reading, according to which when you say I am wearing glasses and I am wearing glasses, we are saying the same. Okay. So there are like 3 readings of the same sentence.
Exactly. So let's suppose I'm a Lewisian and I will grant the third one. So if I'm a Lewisian for all matters indexical, I would claim that there is a whole set of information that is, we will call it perspectival or subjective? Perspectival information. And then there is a subset of that we call phenomenal information. So we have that. So the overgeneration problem arises if we can find cases in which
I got you.
I solve a problem of uncertainty that it can be described by thinking of things that are not intuitively in that subset.
I got you.
And the problem is that because you have said so very little about what it is to be red, and I could have a physicalist view of red, I can build the kind of case I gave, or Uriah could have his zombie.
Yeah.
Because you have this content that is perspectival, but is not intuitively by those of us who have dualist intuitions.
Yeah.
In that subset. So that's the general worry. I'm not saying that we succeeded, but I think you have two main ways of going. One is introduce restrictions so that you get more fine grained, and then you tell us that there is something a little bit more specific, but there is a worry of inflating your ontology. And another kind of move is to say those scenarios are not intelligible, which is what you told Raya with the zombies, and or what you told me at some point, in which you say, no, that's already in the book. So you put in the book all the things that are not. Yeah, anyway, so it's super general, but it's.
I think that I will be willing to discuss more with you, but let me say a few things. So here is something with regard to perspectival, the relation between perspectival and the DSE for Luis. So Luis thought that DSE subsumes the dicto. So the dicto are not perspectival. So what Egan calls interesting DSE content, namely those in which it has not the same truth value for every subject. Maybe the things, so for Luis, this kind of, this possible world content is also perspectival content because it's being one of those inhabitants or being one of those inhabitants. So perspectival content are those that make the partition this way. This is the first step. So not every, then the second step is, Luis thought that all belief, first of all, that all belief is the same, but he was thinking that beliefs of the form I wear glasses are perspectival. Okay? And people reject her reasonings because it's based on internalism. So the Hume-Hempson claim. So the motivation of Hume to think that the content is perspectival is that Hume and Hempson must have the very same content. And people reject this reason. The reason I gave in the paper that I have not presented that is that the two individuals have the same phenomenology. And if sameness in phenomenology, if you have sameness in phenomenology, then you have sameness in information, which can be true in one case and false in the other. And if you buy into these things, you would find perspectival information in phenomenal information, but not in every first-person belief, for example. But of course, there is a danger that says, look, if you want to identify phenomenal states with perspectival information, be careful, because if I am able to find that's me. Because if I am able to detect a perspectival state, which is not a phenomenal state, you are fine. And you're absolutely right. And then I was trying to deal with their examples, and I'm pretty sure that you have a couple of things more in mind, and I would love to discuss with you. That is it.
Yeah, I was found myself wondering what hangs for you on the structural similarity between the suffocation issues and the Mary issues. One could just have a paper that says, here's a solution to the Mary problem. Individuate possibility or slice up model space more finely than worlds. And that generates a solution to the Mary problem.
I have this paper. So it's like, honestly, I have this paper, but it's too long, and I have troubles with it.
Very short.
It's the way in which it was. He read it and produced paper.
An analysis paper.
Am I right also? I'm trying to getting what is the best strategy. In that case, I was having troubles at the end of the day. It was too long. I mean, I have only space in a couple of journals, and one objection that is related to one argument by Chalmers. Now I have developed and I have completely rewritten the paper based on just saying that. And here and this is only focused on the knowledge argument and these things. So I have like separated the two problems, and here I'm dealing with self-location and. But yes,
Are two papers.
If you ever come.
This is another strategy.
I don't want you
like
to
another
get
suggestion.
referenced.
Three papers.
So how do you feel about, because you presented your way out as an alternative to the aspect view.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering how you feel about presenting it as a complement to it. So you capture all these intuitions some of us are having that, sure, like I want to grant you that there's this perspectival aspect, but I don't feel that's all there is. But then the other bit you get with the aspect view, and now whatever criticisms you have to the aspect view are coming from this view.
So the original motivation is that I'm on at least on Uriah's camp, who think that the problem of subjectivity is the problem and not the problem of qualities. And this way I was trying to approach this divide, like say, no, the problem of subjectivity, so the problem is the same regardless of the particular phenomenology that we think. And then you think like this, subjectivity is something subjective to be unpacked, either the relation of acquaintance or this perspectival content is what is behind the problem, and then try to articulate things that have to do with qualities in a different way. And as the main motivation to think in terms of qualities, I take it to be the knowledge argument, I was dealing with the knowledge argument. I might satisfactorily account for the knowledge argument, I mean, for one reading of the knowledge argument, but unsatisfactorily for somebody who believes that there are those, and those things can be put together. It's more a matter of how to present the ideas, and I agree with you. So if somebody is not convinced that you still need qualities, you can put both things together. But in order to present it in a paper, it's better to say, look at this, or you tell me how to do it.
Well, look, here's another, I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but here I have another suggestion. Like a two-step strategy.
Yeah.
First say, look, suppose you believe in the aspect stuff.
Yeah.
He said there's still something missing. Like, I think that's the indexical thing or perspectival thing. And then on the second part of the paper, I'm going to show you that this actually you didn't need this. And so I could just be agreeing with you halfway through, but not all the way through, and some of it's
that's the strategy on the huge paper.
Okay.
That was my strategy.
Okay.
So like even if you know all the qualities, you're still missing the self-locating capacity that you get from the experience. And then saying, look, but once we have that, we might not require the other thing. So that was actually the strategy for close.
If there's still, I was going to express my objection to your point. Is there still time?
We're like 1 minute quickly, or express it and then I don't respond.
Very quickly, two premises that drive your argument. Premise one, Swamp Man has never been acquainted with red experience.
Yeah.
Premise two, Swamp Man knows what it's like to see red.
Yeah.
And then the conclusion is that acquaintance plays no essential role in explaining knowledge of what it's like to have an experience. So that argument is invalid because the conclusion is just making this very general claim about acquaintance not playing any role.
No, I say it's not necessary. I say, so that's your reconstruction of the argument, but wasn't mine. I say acquaintance is not necessary, and that follows, right? Or am I?
No, that's still an invalid argument.
Okay.
So you could think that acquaintance plays a necessary role in acquisition of knowledge of what it's like, even though acquaintance with the target experience of the knowledge does not play any such necessary role. So, for example, my own view is that in order to know what it's like to have an experience, you have to be acquainted with certain experiences, but not necessarily the experience that the knowledge is directed towards. So that's just to express like one kind of gap in the arguments, and on what I think is the most plausible version of developing an acquaintance-based account of phenomenal knowledge. There's not going to be this necessary connection between knowledge of what it's like to have experience X and acquaintance with experience X.
So a short thought, just so that I finish and I have the last word and you're unable to. It's like in anything that you have, the front band just appears here, the tone is, the light is off, and she's not thinking about red or consider anything. This thing still has this thing knows what it is like to see red, and she has never thought or intuition. I just throw the intuition and we continue discussing. That would be my way of trying to proceed, but I see where you're going, probably it's not satisfying. It's okay, thank you. Or, I mean, it's because it's late and we can continue. And so I hear. And I thought, and I did the last word because I'm a speaker. So thank you very much.